Welcome to a new episode of Extraordinary. I'm your host, Jonathan Løw, and as always, we promise you extraordinary guests and down-to-earth conversations. Today's guest is Thomas Erikson. Thomas is the renowned author of the worldwide bestseller series Surrounded By, such as Surrounded by Idiots and Surrounded by Energy Vampires. So Thomas, thank you so much for joining Extraordinary. Even though we are both Scandinavians, we'll do it in English, so the most people out there can understand and get something out of what we are talking about. But I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate that.
And I mean, I think I want to start. You've written this series called Surrounded By, these different books. Obviously, the most well-known would be Surrounded by Idiots. And I read that they sold more than 8 million copies, making you the author in Sweden alive right now who's sold more, which means you must also have sold more books than Jonathan Løw and other famous authors. Why do you think so many people have been reading these books?
Firstly, I do apologize. I have to correct you there a little bit.
Okay,
Otherwise, people might think that I'm trying to boosting my ego too much. I am the most translated Swedish author still alive. There are several of them who have sold more copies, actually. Jan Guillou being one of them, Camilla Läckberg and so on. So I cannot make such claims. So I'm sorry if we misled you from my office in that matter.
No, it's not your office. I think it's Google. So also good that we have fact-checking from the author himself.
It's Google. Let's blame Google. Yes, I would be happy to do so. No, but seriously, why do the books sell at all? Well, human behavior is interesting. It's fascinating. I mean, we meet people all the time, all day long. You talk to a lot of people. And, you know, this idea about this book Surrounded by Idiots or Omgivet av idioter, perhaps, you mean, you know, we all been in those meetings. We sit around the table. We try to figure out what is happening here. What are they talking about? And you take good notes, trying to, you know, sort the agenda out. You're trying to run your own agenda. You bring up your own arguments and you realize people do not listen. What's wrong with them? And when you leave the meeting, you have this inner feeling, what's wrong with these people? Is it me? Is it them? What is it? And sometimes you feel you're surrounded by idiots. Interestingly enough, what I figured based on my own research and my own experience is that some people are indeed surrounded by more idiots than others. Some people are some sort of idiot magnets, you know, they draw weirdos and lunatics to themselves. And I don't know why is that? And usually what I tend to think is who is the lowest common denominator in this situation? If you feel you're surrounded by it, maybe you should watch yourself in the mirror a little bit. That's how I started my career. And I only use examples and reflections based on me and my own experiences from life, I would say. And obviously, I'm quite a common person because a lot of people identify with the same kind of conundrums. Why is it so hard to communicate? Why can't we just connect? Why do we go like this so often? What is wrong here? Why is communication so tricky? And just by bringing it up on the table and trying to find a useful yet simplified method, usually people say, that's interesting. This is helping me forward. I understand it doesn't explain everything. I totally get people are smart. People aren't stupid. They know this is just the basics of what I do, but it helps them to move forward. You know, so I usually say, read my books and read another book and go to another lecture and listen to another podcast. Explore the human mind, explore yourself. And people do that. I think it's a natural fascination that we have, understanding ourselves and understanding each other. That's my belief, at least. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And before I had read the book, I guess I've written 7 books myself. And of course, when you come up with the title, you want a title that people will also find interesting or maybe even like provocative. So when I read it, I thought, okay, so this is a book about different kind of people, different kind of behaviors, and maybe becoming better at seeing, analyzing these behaviors so you can work better together with those kind of people. So they're not like really idiots, but that can still be the feeling you get sometimes. Like if I have to be completely honest, which I like to be in this podcast, I have had many experiences where I felt like some sort of rage towards other people because they didn't truly understand me. And to get like through the day, it would be easier just to put them in the box of being idiots. And then as you grow older, you start to think, well, maybe they're just different than me. Maybe they understand the world in a different way. Maybe they behave in a different way, but there could be a risk of learning something from them as well. But that's actually, at least from my personality, not always the easiest answer. The easiest is to put them in the category of idiots. So like in your books, are you talking about, which also made me curious, I was not quite sure all the time, is it difference in personality? Is it difference in behavior, or is it both that you are, interested in?
Both, obviously. When it comes to Surrounded by Idiots, the first book about the four colors, red, yellow, green, and blue, that only describes behaviors. It only describes behaviors. It doesn't say very much about why people act the way they do, because that is hidden beneath the surface. That would be the personality things. I mean, behaviors, and I'm not a psychologist, but I'm a behaviorist, which is actually not the same thing. And people say that you shouldn't open your mouth because you're not a psychologist. You better shut up. And I say, well, this is at least what I think is useful. So now you make up your mind. But the point is this, the behaviors is what you can see and what you can observe, what you can hear. But it comes from somewhere. The personality is what you try to figure out based on what you see and what you observe, what you can hear. And then you have the surrounding factors. So the same person, obviously, for obvious reasons, can behave in a very different way depending on the context. Let's say in a huge meeting, 100 people, most people sit down and just say nothing. That is usually the thing. In a conversation like you and I have here, one-on-one, we can both have a nice chat and discuss and and interrupt and so on. So we're changing our behaviors depending on the context, but we don't change our personalities. That is still quite fixed beneath the surface. So when you look at the personality, you need to understand much more than only the behaviors. You need to understand the drivers, the motivational factors, somebody's basic values. You need to understand some things about gender, differences there. Which generation do you belong to? How old are you? Some people even say, well, are you the first child or are you the third child? That might matter. I don't know. I have no interest in digging into those things. But a lot of things can affect your behavior. But the personality is after you become an adult, let's say, when you're a grown up, which is actually when the frontal lobe is closing. It's actually a physical thing. Neuroscientists know this now, and that happens. Then you can start to take decisions based on you understand consequences of your decisions, the decisions that you make. That's why it's so hard. It's so let's say expensive for young men to insure their motorcycles. The frontal lobe closes at the age of 24, 25. Girls 18, 19. We know this. Why didn't the Mother Nature make us like that? I had no idea. I just see it. It's a fact. But I am fascinated in everything that affects how people are acting and how they are viewing themselves, how they are presenting themselves to the room. And I like to dig around a little bit and see what the hell is going on there. And there is so much to learn and so many factors. And the world is changing. Homo sapiens isn't changing very much, but everything around us is changing. And we don't adapt really. And then just add some AI on top of everything, and who knows where we'll end up at the end of the day. I don't even know. I can't wrap my head around artificial intelligence. I'm a bit scared of that, to be honest. What was the question? All of this is fascinating, don't you think?
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I've been working with AI for 10 years and made a startup in 5 years. So I guess I know something about it, but I have no idea where it will end up. It doesn't scare me, but also it doesn't always interest me. I'm to be quite honest, I'm much more interested in human beings. I also studied philosophy at university, and I think, like with many other people, I've become more interested not in myself but understanding myself over the years. But despite this, as I just told you before we started recording, I'd never taken one of those DISCs assessments in my life. I don't know why that is. It's not been a conscious choice. Maybe it's because I haven't been through a lot of HR processes or similar, but I mean, it's not even an argument for not doing one. So actually did one prior to this recording, and I know that your colleague was so sweet to just send you like the colors, because you just briefly mentioned about the colors, but we don't assume that everyone seeing this episode has read your books or knows about disc profiles. So maybe could you explain now I get a little scared, but could you explain the 4 colors based on your brief look at the way that I ranked on those 4 colors? And luckily we have a producer, so we can also always edit out if it becomes too bad.
Exactly. Can I have your private phone number? I need to call you afterwards, Jonathan.
Yeah,
No, but
exactly.
seriously, you have nothing to worry about. The thing is this: there are lots of tools out there. You have the disc, you have MBTI, Big Five, and a number of them. And I wrote about the disc profile because it's from a pedagogical background. It's easy to understand it. I'm not saying it's the best one. It's a simplification of the human mind. Obviously, everybody understands that. And if you just look at it in the right way, I mean, it's a 2x2 matrix. You have task orientation, people orientation, and then you have extroversion, and then you have introversion. So you get a sort of 2x2 matrix with 4 basic behaviors, let's say. And people say, well, you can't judge the humanity based on 4 types of people. Of course, you can't do that. These are just the fundamentals. You can mix them in thousands of ways. So that's just the one thing. But then you have the extroverted, task-oriented people. We call them red. And then you have the extroverted, people-oriented people. We call them yellow. And the green people are the introverted, people-oriented, and the blue ones are the introverted, task-oriented. So you get these colors. Those are only there it's easy to remember. It's easier to remember a red and yellow profile instead of a high D over an I with a low C, which would be, in your case, actually what it is, or an ENTJ personality, or sorry, INTJ, ITPK, or is it the old DIET profile, perhaps?
Yeah, I prefer the
Did
colors
I
already.
Did I eat that? No. No, so red and yellow, there you go. So therefore it's easy to wrap your head around it. And so that's what it measures. And it gives you a result based on how much you have of each. We all have the capacity for some of the colors, but usually statistically speaking, 2 colors dominates your most common behavior when you are kind of yourself. When you feel pretty safe, you feel sort of confident in a certain situation. You behave the way you want to behave. In your case, should I say it?
Of course. Let's lay
In
down on
your
the
case,
table.
you have exactly. You're an extrovert. You have lots of red, lots of yellow. You have very little green, and you have hardly any blue at all. Which means you're a fast forward thinker. You like to get things done. You are quite a visionary, I would say. You know what you want and you know how to get it. I would imagine if we got, on a collision in this conversation and we couldn't agree, you would give me a really hard time. You would not give in very easily. That also depends on your drivers, which we cannot see in the disc profile. We cannot see why you are the way you are. We don't know if you're a theoretical guy, if you are sort of an individualistic guy, which means that you have to win regardless what. You would like to crush me because you have to win, just an example, just a saying. But anyways, but we know that you have strong will. Your ego, which is Latin for yourself is quite big, meaning not meaning you are egotistic or egomaniac. That is not, but ego is the self. You have a strong sense of who you are, I would say. You have a strong sense of I would imagine you quite often feel that you are right. But then
You're
again,
right.
you're a smart guy. Intellectually,
Mhm.
you're a clever guy, so you know that sometimes you're wrong. But you would
A lot of
probably make an
times, yeah.
effort to try to convince me. Sorry?
Yeah, I'm wrong a lot of times. I actually think a part of the wisdom that I'm trying to get is how many times I'm wrong, but it's not a nice realization.
No, it isn't. It isn't. And then, of course, it's a it's a personal journey. It's a individual journey that we all make through life, obviously, where we realize our weaknesses and we realize the downsides of our personalities, and it's painful. It hurts. I mean, I stumbled into this kind of methods, systems, models by an accident, I would say. The HR department called me up and said, "Would you fancy a personality test, buddy?" And I said, "Sure." And then when I read the report, I got really scared. I said, "This is a horrible read." They say, "Could you please come in and let's have a conversation about this?" And I said, I better get on the bus here because, I messed up. When I was a young man, I messed up everything. My profile is very red, or like this, very red, but also very blue. So I had two strong task-oriented factors, and the red is the accelerator, and the blue are the brakes, which is very tricky for me because I want to go really fast forward, but make everything perfect at the same time. It's really tricky, mostly for myself. Then I also have quite a strong yellow factor and no green at all. Absolutely no green. I have, I don't know, 1% green or something. I'm terribly sorry. I blame that on my mother's side. They took all the green there. But anyways, but the more you know about yourself, I mean, the more you build your self-awareness, the better you can do, because people see what they see. Doesn't matter who you think you are. Self-awareness isn't usually what you think you are. It's mostly what other people think that you are. If you present yourself to the room and people see, oh, he's like this, he's like that, she's like this, oh, she's going over there, oh, what's happening here? They see what they see, and you can never control other people's minds. You can never change other people, but you can change yourself. That's the good news.
So this is also like this is both like a podcast and video show about entrepreneurship. It's about life understanding, life philosophy, but of course there's also a business aspect to some of the topics and the guests. And I think in this regard, many people will be watching this and then they will be thinking, so in my own, professional career, how can I use this? And if I should take myself an example, I think one of the biggest challenges that I've had as an entrepreneur, so I've founded or co-founded 5 companies, and I think the journey from being an entrepreneur to becoming a CEO is extremely difficult. And I've seen it with a lot of entrepreneurs who are, sometimes it's built into the system almost that, if you start the company, you also end up leading it, at least until it becomes so big that maybe the board will hire a new CEO. But I think for me, it's more like a career change. It doesn't feel natural switching from the things where I can use perhaps the red and the yellow until a role where I have to do something completely different, which is more like go into the background and then make the others good. Is that an area where you have to, like, you can use this and perhaps also develop yourself?
Absolutely. Good point. That's an excellent question, actually. The thing is, I mean, the colors, as I mentioned just now, is one thing. That is how you act and how you behave. When it comes to entrepreneurship and leadership management, whatever, I would add the drivers on top of that. The drivers are the motivational factors, especially related to any kind of work. And the thing is this: if you understand who you are, if you understand what you are driven by, if you understand where you're I'm not very fond of using the word passion, but people use passion a lot these days. Passion is usually about suffering, the passion of Christ. That's not because he loved to hang on the cross, it's because he did it regardless of all of the pain. Passion is when you do things that is a bit painful, but you have to do them anyway. And for me, that is something else than just, oh, I love my work, which is totally fine. But when it comes to where you fit in the best, where do you fit in the most? Let's say, in what kind of context is your existing personality? Where does it come out the best? Where do you use your own capabilities in the best possible way? And the thing is, as you said, you start a business. I've been there myself several times. I've also started consultancies and so on, and I am probably a better CEO than I'm an entrepreneur, but still I've founded a couple of businesses because I couldn't help myself. But I realized it's two different skill sets a little bit, and two different mindsets actually. I mean, the CEO is more of the guy who makes things move in the direction that the entrepreneur sort of pointed out 10 years back in time, perhaps. But the thing is, what people don't like to talk about is you can't be good at everything. You don't fit in every situation. It's a very, I would say, unpopular opinion, but I am quite keen on this when it comes to, I mean, if you have an extrovert persona like you and I, in a way, have, I would say we are good at certain things. We are not good at other stuff. Maybe we are good at some detailing, but we don't like it. Should we do it just because we're good at it? No. Should we follow what our inner, let's say, driver tells us? Yes, that is what we should do because, hey, life is short, and all of those things connected. I think people need to understand sometimes it's okay to be where you are because you enjoy it. You don't have to build a career. You don't have to move up in the hierarchy, and end up at the, maybe vice president or president or I don't know, whatever. Because of the sort of the hierarchical structure is what it looks the same way it has always been for probably centuries or millennia, probably. It is, but it doesn't have to be that way. Making a career can be making yourself a really good specialist, or taking care of people, That might be the career of your life, just staying where you are. Because when it feels good, it is good. But if it feels bad, damn, it's bad. Work takes too much of your life to not feel good about your job. And I'm not saying do whatever you love and scrap the rest, because all jobs contains dirty things you don't want to deal with. You just have to, dig in there sometimes. But if you can, if half of the time you see just sort of the clock just goes and goes, and you don't hardly notice the time flies, then you are in the right spot. Don't change that because someone told you. We're so stuck in you should go in this direction, you have to go in that direction. You started a company, now you have to be the CEO and you have to hire tens of thousands of people. No, I like to start companies. I want to be a pioneer, that's funnier. Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that if it's how you feel about it and you're good at it. That's my take on this. Being good at something isn't good enough. You have to like it, you have to enjoy it, you have to get energy from it. And if you are not good at things, don't do them. Don't touch the CEO position if you feel someone else could do it better. I mean, seriously, if you like to start businesses, well, start businesses.
It's
a
also
no-brainer,
very,
really.
I totally agree. I totally agree with you. And it's also a very popular opinion, at least in Denmark where I live, that you also need to build teams with a lot of diversity, because diversity is good for, development and innovation. And then on one hand, I agree with some of the philosophy, right? You can't really disagree maybe with the idea and intention behind it. But other times I've felt as an entrepreneur that, damn, I just want to hire people that I really like and that I get along with. Because the idealistic part of me would say, well, in order for full diversity, I should hire a lot of people that I would actually sometimes concede or think of as these, surrounded by idiots, because those are the ones that are going to move me and my mindset. Those are the ones that are going to move the company. And other times I just felt, yeah, from an idealistic point of view, that might be right. But damn, I just want to, have a good time at the office with some people where I really like them. And maybe I like them sometimes because they're a bit like me, but that doesn't matter because that will give me a good job. What's your take on that?
Well, that's a tricky one. It depends on what are you aiming for? Are you aiming to hire buddies So you can play table tennis during the lunch hour and have a good time and then go for a beer afterwards. That's totally
Yeah, if I
fine.
can beat them in table tennis, I will. But
If
yeah,
you can beat them at the table tennis, sure. But if you want to have the most competitive team on the market, that is another story. I'm not saying you have to go in that direction, but if you want to compete on the market, I mean, it's bloody tough out there, as both you and I know. The competition is that's brutal. These days, everything is brutal. So if you want to hire the best people, you have to step down from making friends at work philosophy. I'm not saying you can't be there, but you have to live with the consequences. If you hire your best friend from school, fine, do that. But you can't blame him that he's not a super top performer. That he's not on top of his game because he's your best buddy from school. That might be okay. You wanted to help him out. Fine. If you need the top people, and it also depends if you're the CEO, you will never be friends with your staff. That's just an illusion. It's a delusion. That's a way of losing your mind completely. You will never be friends with you. Doesn't matter. Here, I believe. Please don't misunderstand this. I think Denmark and Sweden are kind of similar, kind of on the same plate here. We are kind of friendly and buddy-ish with our staffs, but that it doesn't really work. The rest of the planet, they don't understand this one bit. Norway is probably the same. You only have to go to Finland and see, I am the boss, so what are you doing in my room? Get out, because the hierarchy is there. We all know this. When you enter the lunch room during lunch hour, you will notice there's going to be some silencing of voices. Some people will stop talking. Some people will just take a look around. Oh, there it is. It is built into the system. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm only saying it's a thing. It is there. And if you think you can be just like anybody else, you should never take a managing position whatsoever. Maybe you can't even be let's say, the founder present. I don't know. It's hard to make friends at work when you are on different. They know you have power over them. They know you can fire them if they misbehave. They know that you can raise their salaries, you can cut their promotional programs and so on. You can do anything. You can call them in on holidays and say, "Hey, sorry, you have to work Sunday this week," because they know you have the power. They can't tell you what to do, and it's built into the system. But I also would like to be friendly with people at work. But I understand the difference. I'm a bit pragmatic when it comes to these things. But you can choose. Nobody has to do what I say. You can always choose. That's the beauty of it. You can do whatever you want, I guess.
let's rule out the best body concept. But what about the going back to the colors again? And as you've explained, of course, a simplified way. But most things in life are, if we are to comprehend them, we can't all be like theoretical physicists like Lawrence Krauss, who's one of the other guests, and try to understand how the world started. We also have a life we want to live, and an every day that needs to work. So if you think about these colors again, and if you are building a team, is it then, and again the diversity part, is it important to have all of these colors in every single team, or what do you think? Or the color combinations?
I have a politically correct answer, and that would be diversity is usually good. I would recommend that you can have at least some parts of all the colors in every team. Then again, if you have a team of accountants, you don't want to go full yellow because they will mess it up. They hate details. They don't understand Excel sheets, and the blue people, they love all of these things. They need silence in the workspace if it's an open space office, they put the headphones on, and shut everybody else out. But in general, if it's about cooperation, you would like to have all the colors in the team. Because diversity is good. You get to see the same problem solving. You get to see the same problem from so many different angles. The red people say, we need to find a solution. We need to find a solution now. And the yellow people say, well, I have a creative idea. Let's delve into this, The green people say, we have to bring everyone on board. You have to listen to all of us, It's a team exercise. And the blue people says, I'm going to check the quality on this. So you get so much into the team if you have all of them in the same room. However, you need a team leader that can deal with all of this at the same time. And that's the tricky part, because most team leaders do what you kind of touched upon just now. They hire people who they like. And who do they like? Well, they hire people they understand. And who are those people? It's the people they are like you are. So they hire copies of themselves. Means no diversity. If you are a red and yellow person, you tend to hire red and yellow people. So you have a huge, vast team of super extroverted, energetic people, full of ideas and extraordinary visionary thinkers and everything. But they will never find their papers. No one is taking notes, and nobody remembers what happened in the previous meeting. So there you go. So it is a bit of a conundrum. Water is pouring downwards. You don't need every team member to understand everything, but the team leader has to deal with this stuff. He or she needs to understand extroversion, introversion, task rotation, people rotation. He needs to understand the drivers. Is this a theoretical guy? Is this an aesthetic guy? Is this someone with a social driver, which means he likes to help people, sometimes on the expense of his own work? He's always at another desk helping these people out, but he never does, perform his own tasks, but he's helping everybody else. Is this what we are looking for? This is quite complicated. So diversity, yes. The leadership, that is the problem, and it's a huge problem. If you look at the distribution of really standard distribution of leaders in our part of the world, I would say 80%. No, let's say, okay, let's say 10% are good leaders. 10% are good leaders. They're good. 70% are, okay, we can teach them something, and they are struggling, and they don't destroy too much of the feeling in the office. 20% are so bad. They are so ruthlessly incompetent, and some of them just plain evil. They should be kicked out and never to be seen again. And those people are also in every organization. Well, not in every, but in many organizations. They are so bad, and they are giving managers and bosses all over the planet really, really bad reputation. They are not interested in this conversation whatsoever because they know everything already. But they are out there. I would say 20%, at least 20%. Super bad. Kick them out. Now, yesterday, last week.
Yeah, another of my guests, Julian Treasure, he mentioned a big international research that Tom Peters, the leadership expert, had done, where he found out that the average leader only listens for 18 seconds before they interrupt an employee. So he said, that one of the biggest problems with leadership today is that they are really, managing people. They want them to go into a certain direction. And unfortunately, I think I've become much better over time, but I could recognize myself in your description of wanting to hire people a lot like yourself. Me, like I've never tried going bankrupt with a company, apart from the last one where we unfortunately had to close it, me and my co-founder, even though we'd been on a really exciting journey. But then when we tried to look back and be a bit critical about so what happened, of course, there's never one explanation. But we are, even though we're different, we're a lot alike, and we tended to try to hire people that were a lot of alike. And what we had been extremely good at was execution and partly also planning. But what we'd been terrible at was strategy. Because, it took so long time, it was so detail-oriented. We just want to get moving, trial and error, because that's what had worked before. But in this case, we had been missing a lot of strategy. And I think one of the reasons was we had put together a team and maybe even a board as well, where people were a lot similar and they just wanted to see results, and nobody took this more patient step back and looked at, so are we, do we have even the right strategy that we are executing on? And that is when I want to learn about
Too little blue around the table, probably.
Yeah. And when I wanted to learn, like from this journey, it's a lot about, I don't know if it's the blue color, which I remember I had nothing of, or if it's the green, but this, maybe the patience is like one of my
It's the
biggest.
blue color. Patience,
Yeah.
strategic planning, trying to see where are the loopholes, where will we mess it up? When will we, just drift down into some ditch somewhere? What's going to happen 3 months from now, 12 months from now, 24 months from now? That's the blue behavior, trying to foresee things. And sometimes they overthink, absolutely. So you need the better, but they are good at, they are risk managers. They are looking for risk. You mentioned Tom Peters. He's obviously an American, but still, it's interesting. I saw a recent study from the American employment market. It said that half of the Americans hate their jobs, not dislike or having issues with. They hate their jobs. Close to 50% hate their jobs so much they wouldn't even wish it on their worst enemy.
Wow.
That's not good. That is not good. What is it like here in Scandinavia? Well, who knows? Hopefully a little bit better. But the thing is, most of this is based on two things. One, the first thing is they're in the wrong place because they don't understand their own behaviors, personalities, and the drivers. Basically, the drivers, they are at this very job for the wrong reason. It doesn't talk to their inner, let's call it passion then, just for the sake of argument, even though I said I didn't like the word passion before. But let's say you don't feel positively. 1 hour feels like your half a lifetime. 5 minutes feel like an hour. And for some people, an hour feels like 5 minutes at the same job. It's the same damn tasks, because we are different. So they are in the wrong place, but they just don't know it because they don't understand where the true motivation comes from. And the second factor is bad management or bad leadership. The leaders are not leaders. They are bosses, really. It doesn't work. In our part of the world, in the Western world, that doesn't work anymore. There are a few places on the planet where you can still yell and shout at the staff. They have to follow your command, but those places are getting fewer and fewer, and I wouldn't recommend it. And 18 seconds, listening actively for 18 seconds, that's really bad. Oh, that is so bad. So bad. So, but you and I, we're better than that. We can do it for,
Of course.
42 seconds.
I think I fit into your middle category, the 70% ones. I say that just, and at the same time interrupting you. It's beautiful.
No worries. I probably talk too much. But I mean, the more, again, as we started this conversation, the more you look at yourself, the more you view yourself in the mirror, the more you read the feedback session in any document. If you take the MBTI, or if you take the DISC profile, you can find it on my website, surroundedbydis.com. It's not free, but it's not super expensive either. It gives you sort of a foundation. And look at the page that says, these are the things you can do better, because if the report tells you so, then people around you also see the same thing, even though you might blindfold yourself. I don't want to see it. Well, use your own intelligence. If there are some things that you can do better, why not try? Right? And it's so useful. It is so beautiful when you realize, if I just tweak myself a little bit in this, with this individual, in this context, I just do it a little bit differently. Wow, the results can be amazing. You don't have to violate who you are. Just tweak your behavior 1 hour in this kind of meetings and just see what happens. Wow.
Exactly, and that's also what I got out of both reading your book and doing this test. It was not for me a matter of having to totally transform or change who I am, but it's a thing that, even from a selfish point of view, you always want to build better relations. You want to, if you're an entrepreneur, build better companies, but also like part of like having hopefully many years on the planet is you want them not only to achieve things, but also to become better with other people. So when I spoke to Guy Kawasaki on this podcast. A guy has been an integral part of, creating Apple, and he's now at a company called Canva. And he was like, he's older than the two of us. He's 69, but he was in the part of his life where he was talking about grace as the most important thing, which is basically his word for giving back. But then you can also be perhaps in the middle part of your life and think, well, okay, now I've spent a lot of years maybe trying to prove myself, both to myself and my surroundings. Maybe it's time to take a step back and see, so what can I, how can I develop and contribute? And that's actually pretty hard if you don't use some tools just to help you with the reflection. So for me, it was like a tool to reflect in a busy everyday life where you maybe focus more on doing. Especially, I realized if you're red and yellow, I'm really good at execution, maybe not so good at the breaks and the silence, but it's something that is valuable. So if you realize it's a value and it will give you better relations, not only at work, then for me it can only be valuable to do a test like this. It's not like you're looking for truth, you're just looking for inspiration.
Right, well phrased. Totally with you on that one. And maybe it's a matter of age. I don't know. I don't know exactly how old you are. I don't know how old I am. And of course, I'm a different person than when I was, 24. I have the same personality, but I know how to control it these days. I know where to not go, and I know which buttons I don't want people to push when it comes to, because I can react super quickly on certain things. So I try to avoid certain kind of situations, really, because I don't want to violate my own personality, but I don't want to, make a mess of things and raise my voice in the wrong at the wrong person at the wrong time and so on and so forth. But I mean, I'm not much of a philosopher, I guess. I'm more a practical guy, but I think I saw a TED talk. I think it's 10 years old these days. Tasha Eurich, she is an American psychologist, psychiatrist, one of these two. And she had made a meta study of self-awareness, meaning she had studied studies and reports based on self-awareness. If I remember correctly, I might have got this wrong, but she had studied 3,000 studies on self-awareness, and she had found out that 95% of people rate themselves above average when it comes to self-awareness, which is kind of interesting because mathematically that's super impossible. It's like asking men, are you a good driver? We are all above average, Of course we are, especially you and I. But, and then they did the 360 analysis, asking people around this individual. Turns out, 10, maybe 15%. Who are you talking about? Who is this person? I don't know this guy, People can't describe themselves correctly. That is just the way it is. And relating back to what I said half an hour ago, self-awareness is not so much about how you view yourself. Well, it's that too, but it's mostly about what everybody else is when you enter the room. And that is probably the hardest thing, because you probably heard this phrase, this saying, we judge other people by their actions, but we judge ourselves by our intentions. And I always have a good intention based on whatever stupid things I say, I meant well. But you, on the other hand, you're an idiot, right? And we have to be honest about this. We have to look ourselves in the mirror and say, well, maybe, we are all the idiot in somebody's story, right? That is just the way it is. Make sure you don't find the idiot in the mirror. Happened to me once, didn't end happily. So I'm still struggling 30 years later, still learning about myself. And I think it's a fantastic thing. And I'm perfectly willing to invest the rest of my life. Just the other week, I watched myself, not in the mirror, but I realized, wow, why that strong reaction in that? It was a Zoom meeting, doesn't really matter what it was about. But when I closed the lid on the laptop, I had to contemplate, why did I react so strongly in this case? It was a minor thing, but I felt, the rage within me. Someone said something. It was a tiny thing. And I finally realized, wow, it's because something that happened back there. It's not a psychological, it's I didn't understand this is the way I think about a certain topic. I have to look at this. This is actually quite interesting. And, I'm 58. Jesus, still learning. But what's the alternative? Being called an idiot behind my back. Not going to do that. Hopefully. Knock on wood.
I think that is also like a good life goal, and maybe also a good way, because time is running, to sort of round up this episode, that not wanting to be called an idiot. Maybe you can't like do it in all aspects of life, but I think it's actually quite a nice and tangible goal not to be called an idiot too many times behind your back. And then like, this is a total non-profit voluntary podcast. So when we like recommend stuff, it's not to make money, but I actually would. You mentioned the URL shortly, but I'll link to it when we post this episode. Like surroundedbyidiots.com. That's also where I made this test, and it taught me a lot. It didn't give me any truth, but it gave me a lot of perspective, which I think is important to sometimes just force upon yourself, because we all have pretty busy lives, so you have to sometimes stop and reflect. And I'm sure I will remember these colors for the rest of my life. They will not tell everything about me, but maybe they can be like a metaphor. So when you catch yourself just running over somebody because you have an important cause that you want them to be part of, then maybe realizing, well, okay, I don't have that much blue and green, so I should just listen for a second and try to understand why they don't act as quickly as I want them to, and then maybe we'll even get a better relation out of it. So I really appreciate you, Thomas, taking the time to join this podcast, and even being our human AI fact checker in the beginning when I bursted out with the 8 million. But I still think, it's been translated to close to 60 languages. So there must be
62.
not only a
Everybody was
catchy...
counting.
The fact checking continues. So not even like it can't just be a catchy title. There is, and I know this from reading it, there is, it's not a like super like high scientific book that nobody can read. It's actually quite easily read, and I think that's why it will resonate with a lot of people, because you understand it. And again, it's not like all the letter combinations that you mentioned. So thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Extraordinary. Remember to subscribe to our channel to get notifications when a new episode goes live. Also, visit www.extraordinary.media and sign up for our weekly newsletter so you never miss a new and inspiring episode. We wish you an extraordinary day.